In the farthest reaches of the Karakoram, where rivers vanish beneath ice and return roaring from stone, two British officers set out in 1939 to read the secret language of glaciers before the mountains changed forever.
Hey, glad you're here. Welcome to the Himalayan Journals. Here on this channel, we bring to you real stories from century old field notes. We try to keep it simple and calm here. Think of it as a documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s, covering stories of indigenous wisdom, epic expeditions, and groundbreaking science passed on just as they were recorded. Subscribe, zone out, binge.
High in the eastern Karakoram, where the Shyok River carves its way through stone and ice, two British officers, Lieutenant I.H. Lyall Grant and Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Mason, set out in 1939 to record the restless lives of glaciers that had, for decades, shaped and broken this remote valley. Their journeys and notes became a window into one of the most unpredictable regions of the Himalaya, where rivers vanish beneath ice and return roaring from within the mountains. In early May 1939, Lyall Grant crossed the Changla east of Leh, when snow still clung to the ridges. He followed the upper Shyok through Murgo over the high Depsang plains and reached the Karakoram Pass on the 20th of the month. Snow was deep on the Kadba Gonpo La, and the pass itself would have been impossible for loaded animals so early in the year. From there, he went to Gapshan, near the upper end of the lake that once formed when the Chong Kumdan glacier blocked the Shyok Valley. The lake bed, long dry, lay silent beneath him. Taking the short route over the Depsang to Kizil Langar, he reached Saser Brangsa, and from there examined the two Actash glaciers, the Kich Kumdan and the Chong Kumdan, before crossing the Saser Pass to Panamik. On June 6th, he struggled back over the Kardung Pass and returned to Leh. The Chong Kumdan had a dramatic history. Once degenerate in 1923, it surged forward in the winter of 1924 to 1925, dammed the Shyok, and created a vast lake. The ice barrier burst in 1926, again in 1929, and once more in 1932. Each time, the glacier healed, though more weakly than before. By the mid-30s, Mason had predicted that it would soon retreat, while the smaller Kich Kumdan, then wasting away, would be ready to advance by 1935. When Lyall Grant reached the Chong Kumdan on May 28, 1939, he found a narrow gap, about 60 feet wide, between the glacier's snout and the cliff opposite. Between them lay old crevassed ice and shingle, roughly 130 feet across, the total width from glacier to cliff about 200 feet. He judged the ice front to rise 150 to 200 feet above the riverbed. Compared with photographs taken in 1931, the glacier was now much narrower. A small frozen lake covered ground where moraine-covered ice had once stood. The route past the snout remained impassable for animals, and even on foot, the crevasses made the crossing difficult. Along the cliffs opposite, large ice blocks still clung stubbornly, remnants of the glacier's once greater mass. 2 days earlier, Lyall Grant had visited the Kich Kumdan. Its snout rested upon a marble outcrop about 350 feet from the red sandstone wall, the same position recorded 3 years earlier. Meltwater sank quickly into the porous riverbed, disappearing beneath the glacier and reappearing half a mile downstream. He thought the chance of another ice dam slight, since the river had flowed under the glacier for 4 years. Ponies could now pass easily along the riverbank. Captain Brooke, visiting later in August, confirmed the glacier had advanced in the winter of 1935 to 36 and had since held its ground, its ice still solid and not yet in decline. In the same journey, Lyall Grant observed the twin Actash glaciers, finding their branches separated by 3/4 of a mile. The northern tongue ended short of the riverbed, while the southern clung high on a hillside some 800 feet above. He also passed the Sultan Chushku Glacier near Karakoram, whose snout jutted into the Shyok by 250 yards, the ice dirty and uneven, but without pinnacles. From the appearance of the ice, Lyall Grant believed the Chong Kumdan and the northern Actash were retreating, while the Kich Kumdan and southern Actash were advancing, a judgment he later found partly correct. His information was supported by Mr. Durgi, the engineer at Lyall, who had inspected these glaciers since 1935. Durgi recalled that in November 1935, the Kich Kumdan stood about 1.5 miles from the Shyok's left bank. By June 1936, it had moved forward to the marble outcrop, an advance of roughly the same distance in 7 months, likely achieved within a single spring. Mason, comparing all the data, noted how the Chong Kumdan southern flank had melted away, leaving heaps of moraine and dead ice no more than 150 feet high. The glacier, once capable of choking the valley, was now a fragment of its former self. From these records, Mason attempted a cautious forecast. He believed the Chong Kumdan advanced roughly every 45 years, 1832, 1876, 1923, and might next surge about the winter of 1968 to 1969. The Kich Kumdan, which advanced roughly every 35 years, would follow around 1970. By then, he wrote, the Great Glacier would again block the Shyok. A lake 10 miles long would rise behind it, and floods might follow in the early 1970s. As I shall not be here to be proved wrong, he added with quiet humor, I will be precise. It was a fitting close to a long record of observation, an attempt to bring order to the wild heart of the Karakoram, where even ice has its own rhythm of life and silence